You're listening to the Sustainable Innovation Podcast from NEASC. This 5-part series is for and by educational leaders who are interested in sustaining innovation this year and beyond. This episode is to help you and your community get curious about the upcoming AI-infused learning sessions that will be at NEASC's event in Boston this December. This episode might also be great to return to after you've done your learning. And I've got to stress here that NEASC has already built a few incredible resources. You'll find them in the show notes that are meant to help you think more about AI and the role that it's going to play in education. Those specific resources are 2 stellar panels that NEASC put together. They present a whole range of perspectives on the role of AI in education, and range is what I'm really interested in today. I'll be talking a lot more about a range of perspectives in a bit, but first, I want to start by going back in time to the year 2016. We're journeying back to a very pivotal moment in the history of artificial intelligence. We're talking about AlphaGo, a story that you can actually learn a lot more about by watching the documentary, which happens to be available free on YouTube. Again, I'll leave that link over there in the show notes of the same name, AlphaGo. So the year is 2016. The setting is Seoul, Korea. And the event is a historic showdown between Lee Sedol, the world's top Go player, and AlphaGo, an AI program that was developed to challenge some of the world's best competitors in Go. If you're not familiar with Go, it's known really for its deep strategic complexity, and it's often considered to be one of the world's oldest board games. So, AlphaGo's challenge was not just about winning a board game, it was really about breaking barriers. Before the matchup between AlphaGo and Lee Sedol, the human player, many AI experts believed that having an AI component take down a human competitor in the complex game of Go, we were a decade away from that happening. The game is incredibly complex. It's got basically infinite possibilities. And if you think that chess is complicated, go do a Google about how the game of Go compares to chess. It absolutely knocks it out of the water with how complex it is. AlphaGo was very different. It used deep neural networks and machine learning to not just mimic human play, but to innovate and to actually create some moves that baffled the global Go community. So this match was not just a test of skill, but it really provided a glimpse into the future of AI. Perhaps that AI was going to have a lot of surprises in store for us. AlphaGo's human opponent, Lee Sedol, also referred to the moves made by AlphaGo as, quote, creative. And Go players from around the world have actually studied the moves made and designed by AlphaGo since. It's important to note that AlphaGo had a massive team working behind it. It was a human team, of course, that has since created new teams inspired by the problem-solving proof of AlphaGo, notably AlphaDev, which has done a ton to advance weather predictions. So the point of learning more about AlphaGo isn't just to think about the future of board games, but it's really me trying to plant this seed. What is the future of big problem solving? And how is AI positioning itself not only as a thought partner for those huge, massive problems like knowing when a flood might next hit your city, but also for our day-to-day challenges in education? Questions that teachers ask all the time. How can I better personalize the learning experience? How can I differentiate learning so that all of my learners can access content? And how can I do that in a way that doesn't cause burnout, but actually might save me, the educator, some time and energy? So this episode is not only going to include the link for you to learn more about AlphaGo. Again, it's a fantastic documentary. I highly recommend you check it out. It's also very family friendly. But I'd also like to provide you with an additional resource. It's based on an acronym, and this is really there to help us all think more about AI, the potential it has, the reality of it today, and the questions that we're going to need to keep having conversations about. Before I tell you more about that resource, there's a few important things that I think we need to recognize. When we're talking about AI, it's important for us to take note that it's been around for a while. AI is basically stated technology that can reason, learn, make decisions, do some of the things that we humans do. And machine learning is a form of AI. So instead of being programmed to search for something, it can also learn a task. It can dig into data and kind of put together some patterns. So an example of this, machine learning is being used in healthcare today to help identify cancerous tumors, to do early detection, or also if you ever open up your Google Map and you're trying to get a prediction of how much time it's going to take you to get from one place to another, that is AI predicting traffic. If you've ever selected to watch a video on YouTube that was recommended to you, that's you engaging with a hyper-personalized algorithm. You've maybe also already used something that's called pseudo AI. If you've ever been engaging with a chatbot online, perhaps I've done this with my own bank, and then I get a little bit annoyed and I'm handed over to a human. That's pseudo AI. Self-driving cars today work in a similar way. The human driver always needs to be ready to take over. So I mention all of this just to point out that I keep hearing people say AI is going to be everywhere, when the reality is, it is already everywhere. Okay, I'm going to have to shift into geek mode here just for a little bit, and then I'm going to try my best to shift back out. I want to talk to you about ChatGPT because to talk about AI today and not talk about ChatGPT is really to ignore what's put AI in the spotlight in a massive way. So, what is GPT? Well, it stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. The generative aspect is, well, this model has the ability to generate, to create. If you've ever prompted ChatGPT to draft an email in the style of, say, Ted Lasso or Snoopy, if you haven't, I would recommend you try it. It's going to generate some text based, again, on massive amounts of data that it's devoured, which brings us to the P, pre-trained. That means that the model's been trained on a gigantic amount of data before being fine-tuned for specific tasks. This is really important to think about because if we're using a tool like ChatGPT to help us learn, which many of us already are, it's helpful to be asking questions around what it was trained with. Another way that I frame this is imagine you have to host a really massively important dinner and you're investing a lot of funds into that meal. You might want to know a little more about the restaurant, the influence of the chef, what ingredients they typically use, right? If I ask ChatGPT to give me a list of the top 10 books every school leader must read, it will generate a list. But OpenAI, the folks behind ChatGPT, have not been 100% transparent about the data that's been used. So, pivoting back to my restaurant analogy, if the restaurant told you it was not going to fully disclose anything about the chef's training, any information about the recipes, you'd probably feel a little bit skeptical, yeah? Well, that's a good thing. And I do think that some skepticism with using ChatGPT or other large language models is a good thing. And it's great to model critical thinking and a little bit of skepticism in front of our students too. Okay, the last part, the T, the transformer. This refers to the type of neural network architecture used, which is really effective basically for handling sequences of data. That's what language is. So in understanding the transformer and neural networks, I actually want to quote to you one of the best analogies I've come across that explains this. I'll leave the full article in the show notes. I'm quoting here David Gurwitz from the ZDNet, who breaks down the idea of the transformer as such. Quote, think of a neural network like a hockey team. Each player has a role, but they pass the puck back and forth among players with specific roles, all working together to score the goal. The transformer architecture processes sequences of words by using self-attention to weigh the importance of different words in a sequence when making predictions. Self-attention is similar to the way a reader might look back at a previous sentence or paragraph for the context needed in order to understand a new word in a book. The transformer looks at all the words in a sequence to understand the context and the relationships between the words. End quote. Because of the power of GPT, we also have a lot of scientists working on interspecies communication. And there's actually a lot of really good debate out there about what that means, both the risks and the opportunities. If you're going to be at that NEASC event in Boston this December, it's a topic that I really love thinking and talking about as a dog owner. If you aren't at that event, but you're curious to learn more, you might want to check out zoolingua.com to see, again, what folks are thinking about in terms of interspecies communication. Okay, that was my attempt at a segue out of geek mode. And the thing is, understanding the tech, in my experience, is always best understood through analogies, like that hockey team analogy, and examples of it in motion, like me communicating with my dog. I make that point because the reality is gaining AI literacy, it actually taps back into some of our very most human skills, our storyteller skills, and our willingness to get curious. So that's where I want to go next. But before we go there, I want to celebrate the small win of us unpacking some of the geekier aspects of the tech and us thinking about some really crucial analogies. So before we go further, here's a quick break from our series sponsor, Small Wins Dashboard. We know how challenging it can be to maintain momentum towards big goals. Small Wins Dashboard, created by educators with educators in mind, understands these challenges deeply. It's more than a goal tracking tool. It's a catalyst for sustaining innovation and growth. The Small Wins Dashboard easily captures the full story of progress while school teams journey toward their strategic goals. Small Wins evidence helps teams clearly see what's working in real time so they can immediately use those insights to move closer to their goals. By turning the team's small wins into shared knowledge, the platform fuels professional growth, shared vision, and team success. Everyone on the team contributes to the goal tracking process by reflecting on small wins within their existing team routines, like PLCs, learning walks, or pilots. This approach elevates teacher voice and knowledge and helps leaders build team cohesion and support continual growth. It illustrates not just the successes, but also the lessons learned from what didn't go as planned, fostering a culture of risk-taking and continuous learning. That's why the Small Wins Dashboard exists, to help school teams reach big goals together by tracking small wins together. Want to learn more? Small Wins Dashboard is offering a low-cost trial with no long-term commitment. You can visit smallwinsdashboard.com to book your free 30-minute demo today. You'll learn more about Small Wins Dashboard in the show notes. Now, back to our show. Remember, every small win counts. So next, the third and last part of this episode has a one-pager companion piece. It's over there in the show notes, and it is meant to spark curiosity, engage critical thinking, and point us towards some real-world stories to learn with. In keeping with the theme of this series, the one-pager is organized by an acronym, NEASC. So let's go letter by letter to consider some of the questions and considerations that I'd encourage you and your community to talk more about. Because remember, AI literacy, it's going to be developed through communication, listening skills, the big human stuff that builds relationships. So my recommendation would be maybe get a team of 5 together and each take a part of this acronym on. Think more about the questions and the resource and schedule a conversation. So first up is the N, which stands for New Educational Paradigms. Now is the time to be asking questions like, how can AI create more personalized learning experiences? And what skills will AI help us teach? And what do we want to prioritize? Alongside each section of the acronym is a resource that's going to help you think more about those questions. In the example of the N, it's a piece in Education Week by Lorraine Langrio entitled, "What Skills Should Students Learn in an AI-Powered World?" where she writes, quote, "My vision for the future of assessment would be, kids don't know they're being assessed. They're practicing, they're interacting, they're being playful. Can assessment evolve? And how have we already been grappling with the reality that it needs to?" Moving on to the E, ensuring equitable AI, in making sure that we are not creating these big gaps of students that have access to AI, students that understand what AI can mean for them personally in their learning, and students that don't know that. We really need to be thinking about what it means to teach AI literacy and how it also already connects to a lot of the teaching that we've been doing. So the resource that is there is going to help us think about why it's so important now for us to really be digging into our critical thinking toolkit. We are going to need to learn how to combat mis and disinformation in big ways. When synthetic media, that's media that can be generated by AI, is going to become increasingly more present on the internet, how can we help our students learn to think about the information, think critically about the source and the biases that might be baked in? The A stands for AI acumen. So that asks, what are the key concepts in AI that educators need to understand? And how can AI be used to address global challenges? Many of us in schools have been talking for years about the Sustainable Development Goals. There's a resource that is searchable by the Sustainable Development Goal and shows you how AI is already working towards that goal. Almost every school I know purports to say that it wants to cultivate problem solvers. Today, that might mean our problem solvers need to know how AI is going to be helping us build solutions in big ways. The S stands for sustaining the conversation. When I was taking you through how ChatGPT works in part, it's also probably worth pointing out that ChatGPT has only just recently celebrated its first birthday, only being on the scene for a year. Those of you who have been using it, you're already aware of how much it's changed in just a short period of time. So we're going to have to sustain our inquiry, our conversation. And it's important to be asking questions like, how can we use AI as a tool to enhance and not replace the human elements of teaching? I always recommend having some kind of shared space for shared learnings, whether it be a digital one or even an old school bulletin board, a place for questions and concerns. It's great for me to be hearing that so many schools have launched a PLC and are encouraging student leadership groups to form some kind of AI task force. As those groups get together, we need to listen and understand that fear and anxiety, those are often a part of the process of change. So what are we doing to listen, to make space so that folks feel heard? Again, I want to repeat, underpinning all of our AI literacy efforts, it's going to be that human stuff, building relationships, making sure people feel like they can ask the questions they need to ask. Lastly, our C, community-centric learning. We've got to involve parents, caretakers, the wider community in our AI learning initiatives. The recent Pew Research findings are well worth digging into. Those are linked in on that one-pager. And if you have yet to learn about AI-powered toys like Miko 3, let me read to you from the way that it is marketed currently on Amazon. Quote, equipped with an emotional intelligence machine, Miko 3 identifies, recollects, and remembers the child's moods, growing with every interaction. Equipped with a wide-angle HD camera and high-tech sensors to map distance and edges and move. End quote. Parents and caretakers are going to need the support of schools in navigating a landscape where more and more AI-powered toys are going to be going to market. So I hope that that resource entices you to dig in, to keep conversations going, on your campus, at that event in Boston, and of course beyond. Our next episode will be out soon with even more insight from the NEASC community. Thanks again for listening.